Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating mechanics of the modern car engine. We're going to take that mysterious, kind of greasy metal box sitting under your hood and turn it into a super accessible, easy-to-follow story of physical motion. I want you to think about the completely everyday action of starting a car. You sit down, turn the key, or, push a button these days, and the car just comes to life with that familiar hum. But what's actually happening in that exact split second? It's literally an instant, incredible chain reaction of air, fuel, and fire that kicks off right beneath your feet. So let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First up, the anatomy of the engine. Second, the four-stroke combustion cycle. Third, transferring power to the wheels. And finally, a quick engine summary.
All right, part one, anatomy of the engine.
Before we start tearing into the parts, let's actually define what we're looking at. An internal combustion engine is basically just a mechanical system where air and fuel are brought together and ignited within cylinders to produce power. I want to demystify this jargon right out of the gate. It is exactly what it sounds like, combustion, as in a fire, happening internally, inside a metal chamber to push things forward. Now, what's really cool is how all these totally distinct parts act like members of a symphony orchestra. You've got your heavy structural foundation, right? The engine block and its hollowed-out cylinders. Inside those cylinders, you have pistons and connecting rods. Below them is the heavy rotating mass of the crankshaft, and up above, the camshaft. Then we've got our precision controllers, the valves letting air in and out, the injectors spraying fuel, and the spark plugs bringing the fire. Oh, and the flywheel and electronic control unit, or ECU, managing the timing of the whole shebang. All these major components work together seamlessly to create the physical foundation for our engine's power. But that complex metal architecture really can't survive on its own. It absolutely relies on some essential support systems. We're talking cooling, lubrication, fuel delivery, electrical, and exhaust. If you think about the intense heat and friction happening inside that block, you quickly realize these underlying systems are vital. They are what keep the main mechanical components efficient, lubricated, and, not melting into a puddle of metal.
Moving right along to part two, the four-stroke combustion cycle. This whole process breaks down into four really distinct steps: air intake, compression, combustion, and exhaust. Honestly, I want you to think of this elegant four-step cycle kind of like a pair of mechanical lungs. The engine takes a huge breath in, it tightly squeezes that breath, explodes it to create energy, and then forcefully breathes it all back out. Let's see how this actually builds.
Step one is air intake. Right at this moment, the intake valve mechanically pops open at the top of the cylinder while the piston moves down. And by dropping down, that piston actually creates a vacuum, actively sucking and pulling that essential mixture of air and fuel right into the cylinder chamber. The engine is literally gulping down its fuel. Then we hit step two, compression. As soon as that piston hits rock bottom, the intake valve snaps shut, completely sealing off the chamber. Then, the piston violently shoots back upward. Because the chamber is sealed tight, this upward motion forcefully squeezes and compresses that air and fuel mixture. The big takeaway here is that by packing those molecules so tightly together, the engine is drastically increasing its efficiency and maximizing the explosive potential of that fuel. It's like winding a jack-in-the-box spring as tight as it will physically go. Which brings us right to step three, combustion. The tension here is at its absolute peak. The mixture is incredibly pressurized, and at the exact microsecond the piston reaches the very top of its stroke, the spark plug fires. It unleashes a tiny jolt of electricity that instantly ignites that highly compressed air and fuel. And the immediate result of that spark is this. Rapid expansion forces the piston downward. I just love this description because it perfectly nails the sheer violence and efficiency of this explosion. The ignited gases expand with such overwhelming, instantaneous pressure that they literally have nowhere else to go but down. So they forcefully slam the piston downward. This violent thrust is the power stroke. This single explosive motion is what actually creates the physical power to move your car down the road. Finally, we reach step four, exhaust. The explosion has done its job. The piston is at the bottom again. And now we really need to relieve all that pressure. So the exhaust valve at the top of the cylinder swings open. As the piston naturally rises back up on its momentum, it acts just like a plunger, shoving all those burnt, spent gases out of the cylinder and directly into the exhaust system. This effectively clears the room and resets the cylinder, leaving it empty and perfectly ready for the intake valve to open and start the whole wild cycle all over again.
All right, part three, transferring power to wheels.
So we've successfully generated this massive downward physical force inside an isolated little cylinder.
But how does that actually make your car cruise down the highway? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the path the energy takes. It's basically a linear domino effect. First, our piston is shoved downward. It pushes on the connecting rod. That rod is attached to the crankshaft, which takes that straight up and down motion and turns it into a circular spin, kind of like your knees pumping up and down to turn the circular pedals on a bike. The turning crankshaft then sends that rotary power straight back into the transmission, which manages your gear ratios. From the transmission, it flows back to the differential, which splits the power horizontally, and finally, boom, it hits the wheels, making them spin against the pavement.
Let's wrap things up with part 4, the engine summary.
Let's bring our focus back out to the big picture for a second. I just want you to stare at this word. Thousands. We just walked very, very carefully through the intake, compression, combustion, and exhaust cycle of a single piston. But in a running engine, that precise 4-step cycle repeats thousands of times every single minute. Literally thousands of controlled explosions per minute are continuously firing off, rotating that crankshaft with relentless speed just to propel you forward at a totally comfortable cruising speed. It's wild to think about.
And because this incredible machine is performing millions of rapid-fire explosions just on a simple grocery run across town, it definitely needs some care. The immense heat and friction would literally destroy the metal in minutes without some help. That is exactly why regular oil changes for lubrication, coolant checks to stop overheating, air filter replacements so it can breathe, and scheduled servicing are absolutely mandatory. These super simple acts of maintenance are exactly what extend the engine's life in the face of all that intense heat and friction. So I'll leave you with this thought. How does such contained chaos become a smooth morning commute? You sit there in a padded seat, sipping your coffee, listening to music, totally insulated from a machine that is violently detonating fuel thousands of times a minute, just inches away from your feet. The absolute harmony, precision, and engineering required to make that happen so seamlessly is just astounding. I hope this explainer has left you marveling at the modern car engine, and maybe a bit more eager to look into the brilliant engineering quietly working all around us every day. Thanks so much for joining me.